Hey, Battle Bill here with another video, and today we're going to be getting back into some more Great League Go Battle League battles as we continue our climb back to rank 10. So, as I mentioned in the last video, for the most part, as I do Great League battles, I'm going to mainly be focusing on Mud Boys. I definitely want to get better with some other teams, but as I promised, I will be trying to put out at least 2 subscriber team videos a week, and this is going to be one of those videos. So let's just jump into it. The subscribers team that I'm using here consists of Galvantula in the lead, Azumarill, and Skarmory in the back. And at first glance, the main reason why I picked this team is because of that Galvantula lead. I know it pretty well. We've seen it featured on my channel a little bit, and I would love to get a solid 3 that I feel super comfortable with. At first glance, I don't notice any strengths and weaknesses, but as we get into these battles, we'll definitely come across one. The first strength here is this lead matchup. I got a Galvantula on Registeel. A lot of people, especially getting into Season 2, are sticking with that core Azu Reggie meta. And in this set, I actually see a lot of Registeel and Azumarill leads, and that is bread and butter for Galvantula for it to take care of. So all I need to do is go for a discharge like I just did, and continue to charge them up with my Volt Switches and go for them as quickly as I can. This first charge move is going to come through. I decide not to shield it because Flash Cannon and Focus Blast are both resisted. Both do about the same damage to Galvantula, so I don't mind taking the first one just in case my opponent makes a mistake and goes for the Focus Blast. Here I'm going to go for another discharge, and I'm going to see if I'm either going to get a shield or get the Registeel down in health to put it in farm range. I get the shield here. Awesome. We actually see MP tied. So I'm going to shield this now because obviously the Flash Cannon would take me out. And this matchup looks a little bit closer than you'd expect, considering like we got to the second charge move at the same time. But as I continue to throw these Volt Switches, I should be able to get this discharge before he gets to this charge move, but he pulls off a solid swap. And he brings in Snorlax. So remember all that smack I was talking about in the last video about Snorlax? Well, the game must have heard me and came back with a little bit of karma. Here's the reason why. Watch how I play out this matchup. I bring in Skarmory. I'm noticing these licks, they're doing a little bit. They're starting to slowly add up. They don't do a bunch though, and I know that literally any charge move Snorlax throws at Skarmory is going to be resisted. So when this Body Slam comes through, I don't shield it. I'm still in the green. So I'm feeling great. Notice how I keep on charging up energy. Notice how I continue to not throw my charge moves. He's going for another charge move here, and I'm like, alright, it's probably another Body Slam. I'm not going to shield this. Ends up being a superpower. It's neutral because Skarmory has that flying typing, but it gets me so low, and I still want to commit to this farm down. I commit to the farm down, and he licks my Skarmory down, and I don't get off either of those charge moves. So Snorlax heard what I said in yesterday's video and was like, "What'd you mean I'm useless in Great League?" It also helped that his Snorlax was definitely at that 1500 mark. I still recommend Snorlax for Master League though. Anyhow, back into this. I bring in my Azumarill. He comes back with a Registeel. And the main reason why I came in with Azumarill is because I knew he had energy, and I assumed he'd want to dump it, and I didn't want him to dump it on my Galvantula because I didn't want to have to use my shield. So he does that. Now I'm just going to continue to bubble down. I go for the Ice Beam immediately because I know the Registeel's in Ice Beam range, and if he doesn't shield this, I'm pretty sure he doesn't have a shield, it'll take out his Registeel. So he doesn't shield. He does have one more left, and his last Pokemon is Hitmonchan. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, I got to play this properly. I throw in Galvantula for the sack swap. I assume his Hitmonchan has Thunder Punch. Hitmonchan definitely has some play in Great League, even in Go Battle League. I would recommend a Shadow Hitmonchan though, because between the power-up punches and those Thunder Punches, it can hit the damage and the attack boost that Hitmonchan can get can really start to rack up between it being a Shadow Mon and then the power-up punch boost. So luckily I pulled off that swap. I'm going for an Ice Beam here. He gets the shields, and now all I have to hope is that he can't get to 2 Thunder Punches. He's getting to the first one here, which is fine. I'm going to shield this one up. This would the Thunder Punch would definitely take out my Azumarill at this health, and now I'm just like, alright, this is a bit of a race. I don't know if he overcharged or not. Luckily, I get to my Ice Beam first, and this actually won't do enough to take out the Hitmonchan. I was surprised that it survived it. It survived it by that much, but I get in one more bubble, and I do take the match, and I don't let that huge mistake that I had by getting super greedy with my Skarmory on a Snorlax cost me the match. So now getting into the second match, I'm going up against Lara Pokemon Master 8, continuing with lead the same way, and this is where I start to realize this team's weaknesses. So I got a Galvantula on the Alolan Raichu lead. It's definitely an interesting matchup to play out. Alolan Raichu just got that Wild Charge buff that did go through. I mentioned it in the last video, and Alolan Raichu is even more beastly than it was before. He's going for his charge move here. I know Galvantula's glassy, so no matter what he throws, I shield. And he goes for the Grass Knot, which I should have expected because now, because of Wild Charge's buff, as much as it does a bunch of damage, he probably assumed I was going to shield and didn't want to debuff himself, so that was smart. I throw my charge move, he shields, or she shields, and then swaps immediately into Alolan Marowak. So I'm like, okay, I got an Azumarill. I can counter the Alolan Marowak, my Azumarill, but here's my issue. Especially as we continue this matchup, I'm pretty confident that the Alolan Marowak uses a shield. I end up using a shield, and he still has, or she still has the Alolan Raichu in the back, and my Pokemon in the back is Skarmory and a weakened Galvantula. And if you also notice, this Azumarill is weak to Electric too. So Azumarill and Skarmory in the back are both super weak to Electric, and that's the main weakness that stands out to me about this team of 3, which starts to become concerning as I continue the rest of this set. So it's not something I noticed at first sight, but you know, that Go Battle League algorithm, it'll find you those weaknesses real quick. Either way, I shield the Shadow Ball. Now we're both down to no shields. I decide I want to overcharge a little bit here because I know the Alolan Raichu's in the back, and I know that Alolan Raichu has energy. I also know that I bubbled down the Marowak enough that even though this Ice Beam's resisted, it will take out the Alolan Marowak's health. So I'm fully expecting the Alolan Raichu to come back in. And let's talk about more issues with the game. Do you see how I was tapping that Ice Beam? It made me over-tap. So if you know what over-tapping is, that's an issue in Pokemon Go Battle League battles again, or in PvP in general. Because I was at that Ice Beam, I clicked it, my Azumarill continued to go for another bubble. Big issue. Now here I was trying to be super cautious, 1 of the overtap, and 2 of him switching out his Alolan Raichu and ducking on this Bug Buzz. I know the Raichu would resist the discharge, and I didn't want to take any chances because I was very scared to have my Skarmory on his Alolan Raichu, so I went immediately for the super effective move to take it out. He brings in a Azumarill, I go for the immediate swap into my Skarmory, and I'm sorry, I'm messing up the gender here. She ends up getting to her charge move pretty quickly, so I knew this was an Ice Beam. So I'm very thankful. I'm assuming this Azumarill's running Ice Beam and Play Rough, because if you're running Hydro Pump, you definitely want to go for the Hydro Pump in the no shield situation. It's just more energy efficient. It's a solid move for Azumarill to run. It also gets stabbed, whereas Ice Beam doesn't get stabbed because Azumarill's a water and fairy type. So I'm thankful that my opponent's running Ice Beam there. I'm going for another Sky Attack. This is not going to take out my opponent's Azumarill. So now I'm starting to get a little worried because I don't want her to over farm and throw the Ice Beam at me. So I get a couple more quick moves in. I can't swap or do anything like that because my switch timer hadn't run out yet. She's getting to her charge move here. Ends up being another Ice Beam, and it doesn't take me out. And I'm like, oh no, I still can't swap out. If I had the switch menu there, I would have swapped out so I couldn't get bubbled down. Luckily, Galvantula comes in with 1 Volt Switch, and I'm able to still win that match. So, with the subscriber team, even with that weakness, Galvantula, Azumarill, and Skarmory have such solid strengths that the electric weakness, as much as it's going to be prominent, especially with the Alolan Raichu buff, it's still not the worst weakness in the world. It can still be played around. It's still a concern, though. It's still an issue. You can't let Galvantula go down and then have those 2 in the back to deal with your electric types. So now getting to this third matchup, I end up winning lead again, and that kind of becomes a theme of this set of 5 I do with this team, and we'll talk about that more when I end up rating it in the end. But my opponent brings in their Hypno, and I kind of stuttered on the swap, mostly because I assume Hypnos are running Thunder Punch, and that electric weakness is kind of coming back to haunt me a bit running this team. So I wasn't sure if I wanted to bring in Skarmory or if I wanted to bring in Azumarill here, because they're both going to take super effective damage. As you'll see, this Thunder Punch is coming through. I ended up shielding it, but in the end, it works out a little bit better because I'd rather have my Azumarill on his Azumarill than have my Skarmory on his Azumarill. So that actually ends up making a bit of a big difference. I throw a Sky Attack here, he decides not to shield, and now we're just going to continue throwing quick moves at each other. My health is high enough and I've already given up the shield that I have no problem not shielding this Thunder Punch. As much as it does solid damage, Hypno still needs a couple of them before it could take out a Skarmory or even an Azumarill, because it's a pretty small charge move. Now I decide to actually overcharge a bit, because I'm assuming, since he just threw his Thunder Punch, that he's not going to want to shield this upcoming Sky Attack. He still does have a 2 shield to 1 shield advantage, though, so he does decide to shield. So I'm just, again, talking my thought process through. In the heat of the moment, you're not always going to be correct, but I honestly end up preferring that. Considering how low I get his Hypno, I can shield this Thunder Punch that's about to come through, and now I can just commit to a farm down. So he was probably better off just letting that Sky Attack come through, saving the shield and letting his Hypno go down, because as much as he got my shields, now my Skarmory's locked and loaded on energy. So I just have to wait for whatever the third Pokemon is, or potentially see that Azumarill come back in. As we wait out the switch timer, I check in the top right corner. I see that it says Water and Fairy. I know Azumarill is coming back in, so I immediately go for the Sky Attack. And this will do a decent chunk to the Azumarill. It does about a quarter. And now I'm hoping I can just get to another one before he gets to a charge move. I end up doing that. And in the back of my mind, I'm like, okay, I'm worried about my Skarmory getting farmed down. He also has a shield advantage. So I'm actually going to go in for the swap and bring my Galvantula in, because I'd rather him not farm me down, and I'd rather deal with whatever his last Pokemon is. I'm pretty sure, considering how much damage that Volt Switch did, that a Haunter came in. I actually, because of the fact that I was in the middle of throwing my quick moves, I didn't check the top right corner like I typically would, and it was a Hypno. If he didn't shield that, that discharge would have practically one-shot the Haunter, and now he's going to go for his charge move, and this Shadow Punch is going to take out the remaining health of my Galvantula. Oh, it didn't. It got me low enough, though, and he was able to get another Shadow Claw through, but luckily I was able to get another Volt Switch through, so I guess it kind of evens itself out, and now I decided to go in with my full health Azumarill, because he could throw a Shadow Ball, and it's not going to completely take out my Azumarill, and considering how glassy Haunter is, I can bubble it down at this health range. So that Shadow Ball gets me all the way in the yellow. That is one strong Shadow Ball from Haunter. But now I'm over farmed and I'm already at an Ice Beam, but I want to try and guarantee this KO. An Ice Beam would not take out Azumarill at this health. Over tapping happened again. Notice I was clicking the Hydro Pump, another bubble went through. Niantic, please fix that, but just in case you haven't noticed, yes, one of the most recent updates created that issue again, so I just want to throw that out there for the general public that might be wondering why their charge moves aren't going off the way they're supposed to. It's because the idea or the concept of what's called an overtap is essentially back into the game, and what that means is sometimes when you try to click your charge move, if you're not full on energy and you're doing like the quick move to get to that charge move, and you usually would fill up, your charge move's not filling up, and then once a quick move finishes and you're trying to like tap it, I'm not explaining this well, but essentially, like, as the charge move does end up filling up, you tap another quick move there, and you end up throwing in, like, one extra one because of the fact it's not registering properly. Anyhow, getting into this fourth match, I have another positive lead. I have a Galvantula on a Registeel. We know, based on the first match, how I want to play this out. I'm going to throw this discharge here. He decides not to shield. I'm fine with that. Whatever he ends up throwing first, I'm not going to shield, because I'm hoping this trainer might not know any better and might actually go for Focus Blast, thinking since it's a heavier move, that's the one they should go for. They decide not to. They go for the Flash Cannon. That's fine with me also. Neither of them one-shot Galvantula, luckily, and I get myself to another discharge. So I'm going for this one here. The plan is to try and get to a third one, and he decides to shield this discharge, and when he throws his next Flash Cannon, I'm just going to shield it, and I'm going to hope that he doesn't swap out as I try to throw my last discharge that would take out the Registeel if he doesn't shield. Here he ends up throwing the Focus Blast, which I found fascinating considering he saw how much damage the you see that? I overtapped again, and that forced me to throw the discharge onto the Meganium, which was frustrating, but I was still so confused by the fact that he threw that Focus Blast also. I was really like confuzzled in that situation. But regardless, he swapped in a Meganium, and this works out better for me because now I could just swap in Skarmory and I could just completely farm down the Meganium. But yeah, I was really confused as to why you would go for the Focus Blast there, considering you saw Flash Cannon did enough to take me out, and then Focus Blast just ends up being more energy. So it just wasn't the wisest move by my opponent there, but now he's just trying to do as much damage with his Meganium to try and chunk at my Skarmory, and he's got me into the yellow, but I can just completely commit to this farm down at this point. I'm kind of expecting the Registeel to come back in, but my Galvantula did get it in the red, so I can go for this Sky Attack here, and the Sky Attack would take out the remaining health, and I still have another Sky Attack, so if he decides to shield, it would probably set him in a worse situation, because I can just throw another one and make him waste the shield. And then his last Pokemon is Lantern. Luckily, this is a Lantern running Water Gun. As you could see the quick move animation as it first came in. If he was running Spark on this Lantern, that would have given me such a hard time. So I go immediately into my Azumarill, and I'm hoping to just deal as much damage as possible. I know I'm going to take at least one Thunderbolt to the face, because even though Water Gun's not like the fastest charging move, Ice Beam and Hydro Pump are still resisted by Lantern, and the ideal move you want in this situation would be Play Rough. It's one of those few situations where having play rough on your Azu really benefits it. It's that situation. It's against an opposing Azu. Usually against the water types is where you want it. But luckily, even though that Hydro Pump was resisted, you saw it did a solid chunk there. And I'm just going to continue, and I think I'm going to go for the Ice Beam here. Yeah, because I got him in the red, and I'm just kind of assuming even though it's resisted, an Ice Beam would still do enough. I actually end up not shielding this just because of the fact that I have Pokemon in the back that can deal with it. So I bring in my Galvantula, and I'm like, you know what, these Volt Switches will be neutral, but hopefully I can throw enough of them that I don't even need to take care of his shields, and we could both end this match with one shield apiece, and I can still win the match just like I did there. So that was the logic there. Honestly, I could have shielded the Thunderbolt from Lantern, and I could have thrown the Ice Beam, and he would have just shielded that, and then one of my other Pokemon would have came in to finish off the Lantern. It would have worked out either way. Getting into this fifth and final match, I'm going up against D-Moon RN, leading with Galvantula, and I win another lead. I forget the second match for whatever reason, but I know I saw at least 2 Azumarill in the set, and I saw at least 2 Registeel leads in the set, and I would like to thank the algorithm gods for providing that in my favor. Either way, I'm going for the discharge immediately. The plan here is, since he decided to stay in, unlike my other opponents, I'm just going to throw these discharges as quick as possible before he can really think twice and decide not to stay in. So I went for that one. He's going for his charge move. It's most likely going to be an Ice Beam. And Ice Beam wouldn't take out my Galvantula, but it would do enough damage where the following bubbles after would take me out, and it just wouldn't be worth letting it go through. So I'm just going to continue throwing Volt Switches. I'm going to go for another discharge here. I'm still surprised my opponent hasn't switched out of this matchup. This is actually the opponent that, yeah, commits both shields in this situation, which I found very fascinating. So Galvantula wins this in all shielding situations, but what you have to be concerned about, because Galvantula is so glassy, is your opponent trying to swap out when your last discharge is about to come through. So I'm sitting here, I'm just really worried, I'm hesitant, I'm trying to make sure I hit that discharge precisely. Luckily, my opponent doesn't swap out. This discharge is going to go through and take out his Azumarill. But you have to be careful there. So Galvantula always wins, and I'm assuming this is why he decided to keep his Azumarill in, because he also had a Registeel in the back, and you'll see Galvantula have a positive set there, and you'll also watch me overtap again, which is really just unfortunate and kind of frustrating to deal with. Luckily, it hasn't cost me in any of these situations, but I'm hoping that Niantic will be on that shortly and take care of the situation. Here's another little tip if you're running a Registeel against a Galvantula. Yes, Galvantula is glassy, but trying to lock on farm it down is not in your best interest. So my opponent's trying to attempt that now. I got off 2 discharges and essentially got the Registeel all the way into the red by the time he was able to completely lock on farming. It's just lock-on's really just not like it's not a move you really want to farm down in. The only times you really want to use lock on to farm down is when like it's this much out. Like it's got to be like that tiniest bit. You clearly saw there that it really didn't work too well, and my Galvantula's glassy on top of it. But luckily I bubbled down the Registeel. I have a bunch of energy. I have a full Azumarill. I have a full Skarmory in the back, and my opponent has their own Skarmory here. The plan is to let the Sky Attack hit me in the face. I'm going to throw this Hydro Pump, and I'm going to bring in my own Skarmory, and the fact that they're going to be even, but my Skarmory is going to have more health, means I'm just going to guarantee the win of this matchup and take a 5-0 set, which I'm very excited about. But again, there are major concerns about this team, so once this match is over, we'll talk more about them. I bring in my Skarmory, and I think my opponent realizes right now that there's no way to try and play this out or play around it. So GG to my opponent, GG to all of them. There were some really good played out matches. Honestly, I really did get benefited by the algorithm. I've never won literally every lead in a set, so I was pretty thankful for that. Alright, in conclusion, let's give this team a rating. So, I went 5-0 in the set. You might think right off the bat that I would want to give this team a 10 and say like I highly recommend it, but there was a little bit of luck there, and there are some weaknesses with this team that I can't give it that full 10 rating. I do love it because it's running Galvantula. It's my favorite Pokemon in Pokemon Go. But what I don't love is the weakness that I had to electric types in the back, because Azumarill and Skarmory are pretty weak to them. What else happened was I got really lucky. The algorithm was in my favor. I won literally every single lead. If I use this team again in the next set, I'm not going to win every single lead unless I get super duper lucky. And when you use this team, you're probably not going to win every single lead either. So that definitely has to be taken into consideration. It is a solid team. It handles the main core of the meta. It definitely handles Registeel and Azumarill. It definitely can handle Haunter, obviously depending on shields and whatnot, because Haunter can really go on rampages. The back end of the team Azumarill and Skarmory could definitely deal with Altaria. And I'm just trying to think of other core parts of the meta. We saw Meganium there. Skarmory can handle that. Galvantula has a decent matchup depending on shielding. What's another one? Tropius. Tropius would probably give this team a hard time. Didn't really see a Tropius in this set. Skarmory would be able to handle it, but the other two would definitely struggle, especially... Actually, no, yeah, the other two would definitely struggle no matter what the moveset is. So, in conclusion, I think I would give this team, I want to say, a 7 out of 10. I would recommend it. I obviously had a 5-0 set. You definitely saw all the strengths. We went over a couple of the weaknesses, but there are some other weaknesses I definitely haven't explored there. One of them I just pointed out being Tropius. So, I don't want to give it the highest possible rating. I definitely would recommend you trying it out. Be careful, though. Watch out for electric types in the back. But overall, it handles the meta pretty well, and if you feel like you're running into a lot of meta lines, this team can definitely break them. So, that's my opinion on this team. That might not mean anything to you. Hopefully, I was able to offer you some helpful advice. Don't forget, though, in the comment section, leave me your recommendations for potential teams to try in the future. I've definitely been checking the first video I did for potential teams, but if you really want me to see your team, that's the best way to do it. Overall, I appreciate all support. Don't also forget, damn, there's got to be another word I can use other than don't forget, don't forget. I'm just going to be repeating myself. But please like, comment, subscribe. I really appreciate that, and I'll see you guys in the next video.